The sudden break. Emerges empire. In a quiet world where peace had reigned for many years, a great change was about to unfold. In the heart of the great human empire, life moved slowly and calmly. The people lived in small towns and large cities under a promise of safety and prosperity. Treaties had long been made with the mysterious and feared Deathworlders. These pacts were fragile, yet they kept the balance between human ambition and the dark forces beyond. One cool morning, as the first light of dawn painted the sky, a sudden break in this fragile peace shattered the calm. In a small outpost near the border of the human empire, a messenger hurried through empty streets. The messenger's face was etched with worry, and every step carried the heavy weight of urgent news. The message was clear. The Deathworlders had broken the treaties. They would no longer honor the agreements that had kept the world safe. News spread quickly throughout the empire. In bustling market squares and quiet village lanes, people whispered in shock and fear. The great empire, once known for its order and strength, was now facing a threat that had emerged from the darkest corners of the universe. For generations, the Deathworlders had been seen as enemies to be contained, not foes to be trusted. Their sudden defiance was like a spark that set a dry forest ablaze. In the palace of the empire's ruler, the news was met with mixed feelings of disbelief and determination. The wise King Alaric, a leader who had seen many years of peace and conflict alike, listened carefully to his counsel. He knew that the treaties were a necessary evil, a promise to keep a greater calamity at bay. Now, with the treaties broken, the risk of war was real. Alaric's face grew serious as he realized that the emergence of a new dangerous empire was on the horizon. The empire had to respond quickly if it was to stand a chance against the relentless fury of the Deathworlders. The messenger's urgent words replayed in the minds of every leader in the kingdom. No more treaties, no more mercy. It was a clear declaration of intent, a warning that the Deathworlders had chosen the path of war. The people felt the weight of those words. Families huddled together, and elders spoke of legends and ancient battles. The empire, which had long been a beacon of light in a dark universe, now faced its greatest challenge yet. In the capital city, the sound of hooves and marching feet filled the air as soldiers gathered in the great square. Young recruits and battle-hardened veterans alike lined up, their eyes fixed on the grand palace that had once symbolized unyielding peace. They now prepared for a storm of conflict that would test the strength of every man and woman in the empire. The people could feel that something had changed forever. The calm days were over, and a new harsh reality was emerging. The sudden break in the treaty was not a decision taken lightly by the Deathworlders. They had long suffered under the restrictions imposed by past pacts, and now they sought freedom and revenge. Their leader, a figure cloaked in mystery, and known only as the Shadow Lord, had rallied his people with promises of liberation. Under his command, the Deathworlders were more determined than ever to carve a path of chaos through the human lands. Their plan was simple and ruthless: force the empire to bend to their will by breaking the old agreements and sparking a war that would shake the very foundations of society. King Alaric knew that the coming days would be filled with difficult decisions and hard battles. He summoned his most trusted generals and advisors to plan the defense of the empire. In the great war room, maps and battle plans were spread out on long wooden tables. The king's voice was steady as he spoke. "We must be strong. We must be united. Our future depends on the choices we make today." His words brought both hope and resolve to those gathered, yet a sense of impending doom lingered in the air. Outside the palace walls, the empire's citizens braced themselves for the unknown. They watched as the peaceful sky turned gray with the promise of war. The streets filled with both brave souls ready to defend their home and anxious hearts filled with fear. Rumors of new alliances and secret weapons began to circulate. Everyone wondered, could the mighty human empire stand against an enemy so fierce? And what price would they pay for the freedom they once took for granted? Thus, the day of the sudden break marked the beginning of a new era. The once calm empire had now emerged into a time of great turmoil. The Deathworlders' declaration of war sent shockwaves through every corner of the land. In the hearts of the people, a spark of resistance was kindled, a spark that would soon grow into a fire of determination and hope. The battle for survival had begun, and every moment that passed only deepened the mystery of what the future would hold. The rising threat. After the shocking break in the treaty, a new danger began to grow. The Deathworlders, once held back by fragile promises, now moved with a fierce determination to take what they believed was owed to them. In the days that followed the announcement, the calm of the Empire was shattered by an increasing sense of dread and uncertainty. In distant lands near the border, scouts reported unusual movements. Small groups of Deathworlders were seen gathering in dark forests and barren fields. Their eyes burned with a strange intensity, and their weapons gleamed under a harsh sun. They moved as if guided by a single deadly purpose. This new force was different from any threat the Empire had seen before. It was not just a matter of broken promises. It was the beginning of a plan to claim power through fear and might. King Alaric, still reeling from the messenger's urgent words, knew that the Empire had little time to prepare. In his grand war room, he gathered his top generals, advisors, and trusted soldiers. Maps spread across long, worn tables showed the enemy's positions, and worried eyes followed the shifting lines that marked the border. The king's voice was steady but grave as he addressed his loyal followers. Our enemy is not merely angry. They are organized. They have a new plan, and we must be ready. As the generals discussed strategies, a young officer named Marcus listened intently. Marcus had seen many battles in his short career, but nothing had prepared him for this threat. He remembered the stories told by his father about past wars, stories of hope, loss, and unexpected courage. Now, Marcus felt the weight of those memories as he stood on the threshold of a new conflict. His heart pounded with the realization that this war might decide the fate of everything he loved. Meanwhile, deep in the enemy camps, the Deathworlders were uniting under the leadership of the mysterious Shadow Lord. He was a figure wrapped in darkness, known only by the legends whispered among his people. His voice, firm and unwavering, had rallied the Deathworlders to reject old agreements and embrace a future of endless war. No more treaties, he had declared in a tone that left no room for doubt. Today, we claim our freedom, and tomorrow, we claim our victory. The enemy's determination was matched by their cunning. They began small raids on remote outposts along the border, striking swiftly and disappearing into the night. These raids were not meant to conquer territory outright, but to send a clear message. The Deathworlders were not to be underestimated. With each encounter, their tactics grew bolder. They disrupted supply lines, sabotaged communication, and left behind only ruin and despair. The Empire's soldiers were pushed to their limits, forced to defend every inch of their land. Back in the heart of the Empire, the people felt the tremors of fear. In the markets, on the streets, and in homes, conversations turned to worry. Simple folk wondered if their peaceful lives were coming to an end. Yet, amid the rising tension, there were sparks of resolve. Community leaders and elders reminded everyone of the strength that had long defined their people. "We have faced hard times before," they said in soft, determined tones, "and we will face this one too." The Empire began to mobilize. Soldiers from every corner were called to duty, and old alliances were rekindled. Training grounds filled with the sounds of determined footsteps and clashing weapons. The king's decree was clear. Every man and woman capable of bearing arms must stand together against the rising threat. In this call to arms, the unity of the Empire shone brightly, even as the shadow of war loomed over them. Among those mobilizing was Marcus, whose resolve grew stronger with each passing day. He practiced tirelessly, his determination fueled by the memories of his family and the hope of a safer future. Every drill, every lesson in strategy, reminded him that even the smallest act of courage could make a difference. He found strength in the belief that unity was the Empire's greatest weapon. Yet, as preparations intensified, whispers of an even greater danger began to spread. Some believed that the Deathworlders were not the only force behind the sudden surge of aggression. Rumors spoke of secret alliances with dark powers and ancient enemies awakened from a long sleep. These stories added an extra layer of mystery and fear. Was the rising threat simply a matter of broken treaties, or was there a deeper, more sinister plan at work? In quiet moments between the preparations for war, King Alaric would stand by his window, gazing at the darkening skies over the Empire. His eyes, filled with a mix of determination and sorrow, searched the horizon for any sign of the enemy. He knew that each moment of delay could cost countless lives. The rising threat was real, and it was growing with every heartbeat. The Empire braced itself for the long and difficult road ahead. The Deathworlders' increasing presence along the borders was a constant reminder that war was inevitable. As the first soldiers marched out and the people prayed for strength, the true challenge of the coming days became clear. The Empire was on the verge of a battle that would test the limits of courage, loyalty, and hope. The rising threat was not just an enemy of the gates, it was a call to action, a challenge to every person within the realm. In this tense atmosphere, the stage was set. The Deathworlders were gathering, and the Empire was preparing to defend itself. The old peace was over, and in its place, a battle for survival and the future of the realm had begun. With every passing moment, the threat grew, and the Empire readied itself to face the darkness that was coming. A hero emerges. In the heart of the troubled Empire, as whispers of war filled every street and town, a young man named Ethan began to show signs of extraordinary courage. Ethan was not born into wealth or power. He was an ordinary citizen who had grown up among humble people, learning from their struggles and small victories. Yet even in his quiet life, something in him yearned for a greater purpose. Ethan had seen the changes that the Empire was undergoing. When the treaties were broken and the Deathworlders declared war, fear spread quickly. People looked to their leaders for guidance, but even the wise King Alaric could not calm every anxious heart. In those uncertain times, it was clear that every citizen would have to play a part in the coming struggle. For Ethan, that call was personal. He remembered the words of his late father, who had once told him, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to face it." These words echoed in Ethan's mind as he witnessed the rising threat around him. Every day, Ethan worked in the fields near his small village. Despite the growing danger, he continued his tasks with steady resolve. Yet behind his calm exterior, he was preparing for something bigger. He spent his evenings practicing with an old wooden sword, mimicking the moves he had seen in old stories of valor. His determination was not born from dreams of glory, but from a deep desire to protect his family and neighbors. In the soft glow of the sunset, he would imagine a day when he could stand at the front lines and defend his home from the dark forces that threatened it. News of Ethan's quiet diligence soon reached the ears of the village elders and even the local militia. They recalled a time when young men and women, with little more than hope and determination, had stood against overwhelming odds. As the fear of war grew, these elders saw in Ethan a spark of that same old bravery. One evening, as the village gathered in the modest town hall, the village leader approached Ethan with a solemn request. "We need you to help us," the leader said softly, his eyes full of both hope and worry. "Your heart is strong, and your courage can inspire others." Ethan was taken aback by this unexpected call. He had never imagined that his quiet practice and determination would lead to a role of responsibility. Yet he understood that in times of great danger, heroes can emerge from the most ordinary places. With a steady voice, he accepted the task. "I will do all I can to protect our people," he promised, and in that moment, his path was forever changed. In the following days, Ethan joined a small group of volunteers who were training to become part of the Empire's defense force. Their training was hard, and the lessons simple. They learned to work together, to guard against the sudden attacks of the Deathworlders, and to move as one in the face of the enemy. The training grounds, once quiet and filled with routine practice, buzzed with the sounds of determination and hope. Though each volunteer was from a different background, they shared one common goal: to keep their homeland safe. As Ethan trained, he also began to understand the importance of unity and strategy. His mentor, an old soldier named Captain Harris, took special interest in him. Captain Harris had fought in many battles and knew that true strength came not from physical might alone, but from a clear mind and a compassionate heart. A good soldier defends not just with his arm, but with his heart, the captain would often say. Under his careful guidance, Ethan learned how to lead by example and how to listen to his comrades. This training was more than just physical. It was a journey of self-discovery and responsibility. Word of Ethan's growing reputation spread across the region. People began to see him as a symbol of hope, someone who could unite those who were afraid and unsure. In small gatherings in taverns and market squares, the common folk whispered his name with admiration. Even those who had never met him felt inspired by the idea that an ordinary person could rise in the face of extraordinary challenges. But even as Ethan's reputation grew, he was not free from doubt. Late at night, when the world was silent and the fear of war lingered like a shadow, he would often think of the lives at stake, the families he loved, and the friends he had known since childhood. The heavy responsibility of his emerging role weighed on him, yet he resolved that fear would not make him falter. Instead, he let it fuel his determination. Every challenge he faced in training became a lesson, every small victory a step toward a future where peace might return. In the days that followed, as the Empire braced for the inevitable clash with the Dithworlders, Ethan's transformation became a beacon of light in dark times. His humble beginnings and steady resolve gave hope to those who doubted that one person could make a difference. In the quiet moments before the storm of war, Ethan emerged not as a warrior born in battle, but as a hero chosen by fate, a hero who would lead his people with courage and compassion, united in the belief that even in the darkest hour, hope could shine through. The first clash. The day of the first clash arrived suddenly. In the early hours of a cloudy morning, the Empire's soldiers gathered at the border. The air was cold, and a mist hummed low over the ground. There was little time for fear or doubt. Each soldier knew that the coming battle would be a test of their courage and unity. At the front line, Ethan and his small band of volunteers stood shoulder to shoulder with seasoned warriors. They had trained hard for this moment, and now every lesson, every drill, was about to be put to the test. The sound of distant drums and the murmuring wind served as a warning, a signal that the enemy was near. Across the field, the Dithworlders emerged from the shadows of the dark forest. Their appearance was both eerie and fierce. Clad in dark armor that shimmered under the dull light, their eyes glowed with a strange, determined fire. They moved with a single purpose, their steps measured and their faces set in grim expressions. This was not a random skirmish. It was a coordinated attack meant to break the spirit of the Empire. King Alaric, watching from a safe distance atop a small hill, felt a heavy burden in his heart. He had seen many battles in his long life, but each conflict brought its own sorrow. As he looked over the vast field where both sides were ready to engage, he whispered a prayer for the brave souls who would soon face the wrath of the enemy. His advisors stood silently beside him, each one aware of the gravity of the moment. With a sudden command, the battle began. The clash of metal and the roar of shouting men filled the air. The Empire's soldiers moved as one, their formation strong and deliberate. Ethan, at the forefront, led his group with a clear mind and steady hand. The volunteers' hearts pounded in unison as they charged forward, each step fueled by the determination to defend their home. The first contact was chaotic. The Dithworlders attacked with precision, their weapons striking with a speed that took the human soldiers by surprise. Arrows and bolts whistled through the air, and the ground trembled under the force of the collision. Despite the initial shock, the Empire's fighters quickly organized themselves. They had been prepared for this moment, and their training held firm even under the stress of battle. In the thick of the fight, Captain Harris rallied his men. His voice, strong and clear amid the clamor, gave orders, and urged the soldiers to hold their line. "Stand firm. Protect each other," he cried, and his words sparked renewed energy among the ranks. The battle soon became a test of will. Every man and woman fought not just for themselves, but for their families and their future. Ethan found himself locked in a fierce duel with a Deathworlder warrior. The enemy was strong and moved with an almost otherworldly speed. Every swing of Ethan's wooden sword met with a counter, each parry a reminder of the danger at hand. For a moment, the world around him faded into a blur of movement and sound. His focus was absolute. Every lesson from his training and every word of encouragement from Captain Harris came together in that single moment. With a swift move and a burst of courage, Ethan managed to disarm his opponent. The victory was small, but it gave him and those watching hope that the tide could turn in their favor. Elsewhere on the battlefield, the clash of swords and shields created a chaotic symphony of war. The Empire's soldiers worked together as a single unit, their strategies honed by months of preparation. They shifted and adjusted their formation, adapting to the enemy's unpredictable attacks. Even as the battle grew fierce, the human spirit did not waver. The soldiers fought with a mix of fear and determination, their eyes set on defending every inch of their land. The Deathworlders, led by their silent, relentless might, pressed on with a brutality that left little room for error. Their attacks were like waves crashing against a cliff. Strong, relentless, and unyielding. Every encounter left scars on both sides, and the cost of war was paid in blood and sweat. Yet, even in the midst of chaos, there was a sense of honor. Both armies knew that this fight was more than a battle. It was a struggle for survival, a test of which side could stand together in the face of overwhelming odds. As the morning turned to midday, the battlefield was strewn with signs of the struggle. Tattered banners, broken weapons, and the fallen stood as silent witnesses to the conflict. Amidst the ruins of the skirmish, Captain Harris took a moment to check on his men. The losses were heavy, but the spirit of the soldiers remained unbroken. "We must hold this ground," he told his weary comrades, his eyes burning with determination. "Our strength lies in our unity." For Ethan, the battle was a turning point. He saw the pain and loss around him, and yet he also witnessed acts of extraordinary bravery. A wounded soldier, helped by a stranger, a young recruit standing firm against a seasoned enemy. These moments reminded him why they were fighting. Each act of valor was a spark that lit the darkness, proving that hope could exist even in the heart of war. As the first clash drew to a close, both sides paused, catching their breath and assessing the damage. The Empire's soldiers, though battered, stood firm in their resolve. They had faced the first wave of the Deathworlders and had survived. In the silence that followed the battle, there was no time to rest. Each commander knew that this was only the beginning. The clash had set the stage for a war that would test the limits of courage and sacrifice. In that moment, the human spirit shone through. The battlefield, though scared by violence, was also a testament to the strength of a united people. The first clash had been fierce, but it had also been a call to arms, a reminder that even in the darkest times, heroes could rise and stand against the tide of destruction. The turning point. As the battle raged on, the tide of war began to shift in unexpected ways. In the midst of chaos and clashing weapons, a secret began to reveal itself, a secret that could change everything for the Empire and the Deathworlders alike. During the battle's peak, while soldiers fought on both sides with fierce determination, Ethan found himself separated from his unit. In the thick of the struggle, he discovered a hidden passage behind a shattered stone wall. Following a narrow corridor lined with old, crumbling carvings, Ethan stumbled upon a small chamber tucked away from the fighting. Inside, the room held strange symbols, and a map etched into stone, a map that hinted at a secret plan hidden deep within the enemy ranks. Ethan's heart pounded as he examined the map. It showed hidden positions, secret routes, and what appeared to be the location of a powerful weapon. This weapon was not like any ordinary armament. It was an ancient device, capable of changing the course of the war with its mysterious energy. The map also revealed that the Deathworlders had planned this move well in advance. Their attack, it seemed, was only the first step in a larger plan that had been hidden for years. Knowing the value of this discovery, Ethan quickly gathered his thoughts. He knew he had to share this information with his leaders, but the risk was high. Every moment spent away from the main battle could mean danger, and the enemy was still advancing. Yet he also realized that this secret could give the Empire a fighting chance to counter the relentless assault of the Deathworlders. In a burst of courage, Ethan carefully retraced his steps through the chaotic battlefield. Dodging enemy patrols and avoiding the stray blows of clashing steel, he made his way back to the command center, where King Alaric and his generals were planning the next move. His heart raced as he slipped past the rear lines, clutching the map as if it were the key to hope itself. At the command center, King Alaric listened intently as Ethan explained what he had found. The wise king saw the potential in this secret information. "This map may be our turning point," Alaric declared, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. The generals gathered around the stone map, studying its ancient lines and markings. It was clear that the Deathworlders had been planning more than just a simple attack. They had been waiting for the right moment to use this hidden weapon to crush the Empire. The revelation caused a stir among the leaders. Some were skeptical, wondering if the map could truly lead to a weapon of such power. Others, driven by desperation and hope, believed that this could be the advantage the Empire needed. In the midst of this debate, a decision was made. A small, trusted group of soldiers, including Ethan and his mentor Captain Harris, would be sent on a covert mission to uncover the location shown on the map. Before setting out, Captain Harris placed a firm hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Your bravery has brought us this hope," he said. "Remember, every step we take now could save lives. We must move quietly and work together, for the fate of our people depends on us." Ethan nodded, his determination growing even stronger. This mission was dangerous, but the potential to turn the tide of the war made it a risk worth taking. As the group ventured into enemy territory under the cover of night, the map guided their path through winding, narrow trails that led deep into the heart of enemy lands. The air was filled with tension and uncertainty. Every rustle in the dark, every distant sound, reminded them that the enemy was always near. They moved with silent precision, careful not to alert any patrols. The mission was simple in its goal, but complex in its dangers. The deeper they traveled, the more they realized that the map was not just a guide to a weapon. It was a window into the enemy's mind. The route revealed by the map was chosen to protect a secret that had been guarded for generations. The group soon encountered signs of an ancient structure, half buried by time, standing as a silent witness to battles long past. It was here, hidden away in the remote reaches of the enemy land, that the secret weapon was kept. Within the structure, the group found evidence of the Deathworlders' secret plans. There were markings on the walls and old, dusty relics that hinted at a power far beyond conventional arms. It was clear that this was not merely a weapon, but a symbol of the enemy's long-held desire to overturn the old order and start a new era of chaos and war. The information gathered by Ethan and his team brought clarity to the true scope of the enemy's ambition. Back at the Empire's command center, King Alaric and his advisors prepared for the next steps. The revelation of the secret plan ignited a spark of hope among the leaders. It was now clear that the war was not just about breaking treaties or raw power. It was about the deep secrets and ancient grudges that had long festered beneath the surface. The map and its secrets had become the turning point, a moment when the Empire could choose to fight not just with strength, but with wisdom and strategy. In that moment, the Empire found new resolve. The hidden secret, uncovered by an ordinary hero, promised a path to victory if used wisely. But it also reminded everyone that war was not simply a clash of armies. It was a battle for truth, for heritage, and for the future of all those who called the Empire home. The turning point had been reached. The discovery of the map and the secret it held would change the war forever. With hope kindled and a plan in hand, the Empire braced itself for the challenges ahead, ready to fight not just with weapons, but with the strength of their spirit and the power of unity. You said, war escalates. With the secret map discovered and its secrets known, the war took a darker turn. As the Empire prepared to use the hidden weapon against the Dithworlders, both sides found themselves pushed to the limit. What had started as a clash of armies now grew into a full-scale war that shook every corner of the realm. On the battlefield, the fighting became more intense and bitter. The Dithworlders, now aware that the Empire was close to uncovering their most guarded secret, fought with a new fury. Their attacks were more coordinated and desperate. They launched surprise raids at night, striking supply lines and communication posts. Their goal was clear: to disrupt the Empire's plans and force them into a hasty retreat. King Alaric, watching the chaos unfold from his war room, felt the heavy burden of leadership. Every decision now carried the weight of many lives. He ordered more troops to the border, determined to keep every inch of his land safe. In the training grounds and the makeshift barracks, soldiers pushed themselves harder than ever. The hope that had been sparked by the discovery of the secret weapon now had to be matched by real strength on the battlefield. Ethan, still fresh from his earlier mission, continued to lead his small band of fighters. His experience on the covert mission had taught him that the enemy was not only strong but also cunning. As the Empire's forces moved to secure the hidden weapon, Ethan and his team faced constant ambushes. Every step forward was met with challenges, and the group was forced to adapt quickly. They moved stealthily and fought hard, learning that trust and teamwork were their greatest assets in these troubled times. Captain Harris, now more weathered from the ongoing conflict, stood by Ethan's side. Together, they planned daring moves to outsmart the enemy. In one critical skirmish, they'd managed to hold a strategic hill that overlooked a vital passage. This small victory boosted the morale of the troops, showing that even against overwhelming odds, careful planning and courage could win battles. Yet every success came at a high cost. The scars of war were visible on both sides, on the land, in the hearts of the soldiers, and in the eyes of every citizen. Rumors began to spread throughout the Empire, whispers of dark alliances and even older enemies reaching out from the shadows added to the fear. Some said that the Dithworlders were not acting alone, but had found help from forgotten forces that had long lain dormant. These stories, though unconfirmed, made the people question what other dangers might be hidden behind the enemy lines. In the midst of the escalating war, the people of the Empire showed remarkable resilience. Villages near the borders banded together to support the soldiers. Farmers left their fields to help build defenses, and artisans repaired broken weapons and armor. Every person, whether on the front lines or at home, felt the pressure of the ongoing conflict. The war was no longer a distant event. It was part of everyday life. At the same time, the Empire's leaders began to refine their strategy. The secret weapon, now carefully guarded and prepared, was seen as the hope to turn the tide of the war. King Alaric and his generals held long meetings under dim candlelight, mapping out a plan that balanced defense with a bold counterattack. Their voices were serious and full of determination. They knew that if they could use the secret weapon at the right moment, they might force the Dithworlders into a retreat and bring a turning point to the war. But the Dithworlders were not idle. Their leader, the enigmatic Shadow Lord, prepared his forces for what would be a final decisive push. His voice echoed in the dark, urging his warriors to fight with all their might for their freedom. As the Empire's defenses tightened and the secret weapon neared completion, the enemy's resolve hardened further. Every side was ready to sacrifice much for victory. In this period of rising violence and deepening conflict, the Empire found itself at a crossroads. The war was escalating on all fronts, both in open battle and in the hidden struggles of strategy and survival. As the soldiers fought with ever-increasing determination and the leaders weighed the heavy decisions of war, one truth remained clear: The future of the realm depended on the courage and unity of its people. The final confrontation and cliffhanger. The day of reckoning finally arrived. The Empire's forces, hardened by endless battles and deep loss, now stood on the edge of a great valley. Across the land, a massive army of Deathworlders gathered, their dark figures moving in silent, determined formation. For months, both sides had endured hardships and uncertainty, but now it was time for a final showdown that would decide the future of the realm. In the midst of the Empire's ranks, Ethan tightened his grip on his sword. Every scar on his face and every drop of sweat told the story of the battles he had fought. Alongside him, Captain Harris and other brave soldiers formed a tight circle, their eyes fixed on the enemy. They knew that the secret weapon, now safely prepared, held the promise of turning the tide of war. Yet, even with this hope, the looming enemy and their mysterious leader, the Shadow Lord, filled everyone with apprehension. King Alaric had led his army to the valley with one clear purpose: to end the war and secure peace for his people. He rode at the front of the army, his face set with determination and sorrow for the lives lost. His advisors had warned him that this battle would be the hardest yet, but he believed in the strength of his people. The final confrontation was not only a test of might, but of the will and heart that had kept the Empire together. As the two armies faced each other, time seemed to slow down. The valley became a silent stage for the battle to come. For a moment, even the chirping of birds and the whisper of the wind felt like a prayer. Then, with a cry from King Alaric, the battle erupted into a furious clash. Swords rang against shields, and the sound of battle filled the air. The Empire's soldiers fought with the knowledge that every swing of their weapon carried the weight of their future. In the heat of the melee, Ethan found himself once again at the center of the conflict. He moved through the fray with both skill and caution, protecting his comrades while seeking a chance to strike at the enemy's heart. Suddenly, his eyes met those of a towering Deathworlder. This warrior, clad in dark armor and led by the silent power of the Shadow Lord, challenged Ethan like no other. Their duel began in earnest. Each parry and thrust was a test of strength, honor, and determination. For a long moment, the sounds of battle faded into the background as the two fought with all their might. Meanwhile, in a hidden corner of the valley, the secret weapon was being readied. The Empire's engineers and mages worked side by side to activate its ancient power. Their faces were lit by a strange, blue light that pulsed with energy. They hoped that once the weapon was unleashed, it would bring an end to the relentless assault of the Deathworlders. But as the device neared activation, a tremor ran through the ground, a warning sign that something unexpected was stirring. Back at the center of the battle, the duel between Ethan and the Deathworlder warrior reached a critical point. With every clash of metal, the future of the Empire hung in the balance. In a decisive moment, Ethan saw a chance to gain the upper hand. He raised his sword and charged with a cry that echoed across the valley. The enemy met him with equal force, and in that burst of energy, the duel tipped in his favor. The crowd of soldiers cheered, drawing strength from his bravery. However, just as victory seemed close, a deep, resonant sound cut through the clamor of battle. A sound that came not from the clash of weapons, but from the very earth itself. The ground shook violently beneath the soldiers' feet. King Alaric's eyes widened as he realized that the tremor was not just the fury of the battle, but the sign of something greater approaching. The secret weapon, now glowing with a powerful energy, began to hum louder, as if it too sensed the impending danger. In that moment, the sky darkened and a thick, ominous fog crept over the valley. The Deathworlders halted their assault, their eyes narrowing in unison. From the fog emerged a new figure, a tall, cloaked presence that none had seen before. It moved with an eerie grace and carried an aura of ancient power. Soldiers on both sides stopped and stared in shock. Was this a new enemy? Or had the Deathworlders called upon an even older force to aid them? The battle paused, caught in a moment of tense uncertainty. King Alaric called for calm, but his voice trembled with the realization that the war had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined. Ethan, still standing strong after his duel, looked up at the looming figure. The silent messenger of doom seemed to signal that the final conflict was not yet over, that the real test was only just beginning. In that heart-stopping moment, with the armies frozen in time, and the secret weapon humming its ominous tune, the fate of the Empire hung by a fragile thread. The looming figure in the fog held the promise of power and destruction, and the final confrontation was poised on the brink of a new, terrifying chapter. The screen faded to black, leaving the outcome uncertain, and the audience eager for the next twist in the epic saga.